Okay, this first tip is on embossing. So I'm going to use one of these plastic plates. You can find these at practically any craft store. And I'm going to use black paper because I'm going to show you a tip about using dark paper. So what you want to do is you want to take your paper and you want to tape it down on the plate with some movable painter's masking tape. I like to use that for everything because it doesn't rip the paper apart, yet it holds, and it just works perfectly. So these are embossing tools, and they come in various sizes. Now this actually came out of a kit that I have for embossing metal, but this also obviously works on paper. So I'm going to use the biggest one first, and I'm going to start. Now first of all, you want to make sure that your paper is taped down face first so that your embossed image is going to be on the underside when you remove this. Okay, and so I just simply am going to take the biggest one first and start going up and down in a motion like this. And I'm going to do that until I get the coverage that I want. Now if I want a finer detail, and I'm using a honeycomb plate, so if I want a finer detail, I go to a smaller embossing point, such as this one. And then I start, and that picks up the finer detail. Now I'm not going to do this all because the noise will probably drive you crazy, but I'm just giving you the tips on how to do it. And then I'll finish it and we'll move on to the next step. And this is the smallest one that really picks up the fine lines. So we want to use that one last, just to get the fine lines in there. And so after I'm finished with this, we're going to flip it over and we're going to go to step 2. Okay, now that I've finished embossing, I'm going to go on to the next quick step. I'm going to take a paper towel, just fold it over my fingers. Don't you love these high-tech tools? And I'm just going to put a tiny bit of gesso on it. White gesso is what I'm using. And then I'm going to rub it on. And then very quickly, I'm going to dip the towel in some water, squeeze it out, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to wipe across the top like that. See that? And you can do this with any color, and you could do it completely over the top. You don't want to rub too much because you'll start rubbing the paper off, and you don't want to get it too wet. After that's done, you could simply hit it with a heat gun to set it. Some of the other things you can do once you have your white on there is you could spray some glimmer mist on top. This is sherbet. So I'm just going to douse it on the top, and then I'm going to dab it. And once that dries, that color is going to set in there and give off a really pretty sheen. I don't know if you can see that, but the other thing you can do with this is you could do a whole sheet. You can cut out letters. You can cut out pictures, flowers, whatever you want to do with it. So that's tip number 1, using a simple embossing plate, embossing tool, and white gesso. And there you have it. Now on to step 2. Okay, another fun and quick thing you could do with black paper is using gesso and either a foam brush or a paint brush. You can, I'm just going to pour a little bit right on here. Actually, a little bit more. You can brush gesso onto a rubber stamp, just like that. And you can stamp it right onto your paper. The paper will pick up the gesso paint. Once that dries, it's going to be beautiful. Not only that, it'll act like a resist, so you can actually do something around it and it won't pick it up on the gesso once you wipe it off with a slightly damp paper towel. So that's gesso on black paper. Okay, another thing that also works aside from gesso, is acrylic paint. Now this is a really pretty metallic gold paint, acrylic paint, that I'm simply going to lightly brush over my stamp. And I say lightly because you don't want it to be too heavy. You don't want it to be like soppy, leaving, you know, big glop marks on your piece of paper or your artwork. So, just that simple. The thing about doing this is you definitely want to make sure to clean the stamp immediately when you're finished. Okay? And so you can just do that on your print stamp and simply just put it down on your paper and press. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Almost looks embossed when you use the metallic. And this actually does work with embossing as well. And the other thing is, see how it went over the dream word? Remember I told you can simply take some water and just very lightly wipe over that, because that gesso acts as a resist. And there you have it. So that's the tip on using gesso and acrylic paints on your rubber stamps. On to the next tip.